Have you ever felt like you could read people well? Like you just know when someone is off, when their energy feels heavy, or when their behavior crosses a line? You might trust your instincts, thinking, I can tell when someone's toxic. But here's something that might challenge everything you believe. What if the real dangers don't look dangerous at all? What if the people who are the most damaging to your mental and emotional health are actually the ones who smile the most? The kind, the soft-spoken, even the ones you call family. You see, while you're out here trying to protect yourself from the obvious villains, there's something way more subtle, way more dangerous, creeping in through the back door, and it's not always visible. What if I told you it's the unconscious of others invading yours? Carl Jung, one of the most important voices in psychology, dedicated his life to understanding these unseen dynamics. In his work, The Ego and the Unconscious, he reveals that most of what drives us, our choices, reactions, even the way we treat others, isn't really conscious at all. It's coming from a place we don't fully see. And that doesn't just apply to you. It applies to everyone, every person you deal with, every relationship you're in. And that's where the danger lies. Because when someone refuses to see the darkness inside themselves, that darkness starts looking for a host. And too often that host is you. So ask yourself, how many times have you walked away from a conversation feeling emotionally wiped out, like your mind was foggy? Or maybe you've been blamed for something that clearly wasn't your fault. Maybe you've even been pulled into drama or pain that never really belonged to you in the first place. That's not just bad luck. Jung had a name for this: projection. It's when someone takes the parts of themselves they can't accept and unconsciously throws them onto someone else. Often that someone else becomes a symbol, a villain, a savior, a threat, or an ideal. But in all of those cases, you stop being you. You become a role in their internal drama. And the most terrifying part? A lot of times, you don't even notice it's happening. You think you're being kind, supportive, emotionally mature, maybe even noble, but in reality, you're being dragged into a psychological battlefield that was never yours, a fight you didn't sign up for. This doesn't just happen with people who have bad intentions. That's what makes it so dangerous. Jung said the real risk isn't the openly malicious, it's the people who are ruled by unconscious forces they don't even recognize. They wear masks, they carry trauma, they're wrapped up in old pain, and they haven't processed any of it. They're not evil, but they are dangerous. And that danger doesn't knock at your front door. It seeps in, quietly, through soft tones, passive-aggressive comments, guilt trips, weird silences, until one day you're not sure who you are anymore. If you're feeling that right now, in a relationship, at work, even in your own family, listen closely. You might be blaming yourself, thinking, what's wrong with me? But the truth might be this: nothing. Nothing is wrong with you. What's wrong is that you're being used as a vessel for someone else's unconscious pain. In this video, we're going to explore 6 emotionally dangerous personality types that Jung would have warned us about. These aren't cartoon villains. They're not trying to destroy your life on purpose, but they're acting from deep psychological patterns, projections, shadows, and unresolved trauma that make them incredibly destructive without even realizing it. We'll be drawing straight from Jung's works: The Ego and the Unconscious, Archetypes in the Collective Unconscious, and Ion. And here's the kicker. This isn't just about recognizing these patterns in other people. It's about looking in the mirror too, because one or more of these patterns might be playing out inside you as well. So take a breath, settle in, What you're about to hear could change the way you see others and yourself forever.
Let's start with the first type, the unconscious manipulator. This is the kind of person who makes you feel like you're the problem, like you triggered them, like you owe them something. At first, they seem deep, sensitive, maybe even a little broken in a way that makes you want to help. But the longer you're around them, the more you realize this relationship is exhausting, emotionally draining, confusing. Unconscious manipulators don't wake up and say, "I'm going to mess with this person's mind today." That's not how it works. The real issue is they haven't processed their own wounds. So instead of dealing with their pain, they project it. And the way that plays out is subtle. They never say, "This is your fault," outright. But somehow, you end up feeling like it is. Their pain becomes your responsibility. Their mood, your job to fix. Their disappointment, somehow it's because of something you did. Jung explained projection like this. It's an unavoidable function of the psyche, but if you don't recognize it, it becomes dangerous. In The Ego and the Unconscious, he wrote that projection causes a kind of psychic blindness. In other words, the person literally cannot see you for who you are. They see only what they've buried inside themselves. The unconscious manipulator doesn't see you. They see a mirror, a reflection of a part of themselves they've tried to ignore. You might recognize this type of person as someone who always positions themselves as the victim. They never take ownership. If they're angry, it's because you upset them. If they're sad, it's because you weren't supported enough. If they feel inferior, it's because you were trying to make them feel small. Over time, this gets into your head. You start wondering, was I too harsh? Did I say something wrong? Am I the toxic one? And that, right there, is how the manipulation works. No yelling, no demands, just slow, silent erosion. Worse still, these people can be charming, charismatic, deep. There's something magnetic about them. You feel like you understand them better than anyone else. You believe you can help them heal. But what's really happening is, you're pouring yourself out for someone who has no interest in doing the work of healing. You're slowly sacrificing your own psychic health in the process. Jung warned about this. When someone projects onto you, they don't see you as a person. You become a symbol, a role, a savior, an enemy, a parent, but not you. And when you're stuck in a symbolic relationship, you're stuck in a lie. You stop being a subject in your own story. You're just an actor in theirs. So, how do you protect yourself? First, awareness. Name the pattern. See it for what it is. And then, cut the invisible emotional threads that tie you to their narrative. Constantly ask yourself, is what I'm feeling mine, or is this something that's been projected onto me? Because unconscious manipulators don't break down your walls with force. They slip in through your empathy. And the only thing that can stop them is clarity. But even more subtle than that, there's another type that's just as dangerous. The one who doesn't manipulate with emotion, but hides behind the mask. The one who lives for the mask. The one who makes even you start questioning what's real. In the next section, we'll break down the second dangerous personality Jung described, the bearer of the persona.
Now, at first glance, this person doesn't seem dangerous at all. In fact, they might look like they've got it all together. Always polite, always saying the right thing, perfect smile, clean image. Maybe they're successful, respected, admired. But something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but it's like there's a wall between you and them. You never see who they really are. Every interaction feels rehearsed, controlled, carefully curated. And that's because it is. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the social mask we wear. It's the role we play to fit in. Teacher, friend, boss, parent, artist, everyone has a persona. It's not inherently bad. It helps us navigate life. It's how we function in society. But here's the problem. Some people become so identified with their mask that they believe they are that mask. They lose touch with anything real. Jung wrote in The Ego and the Unconscious that the persona is what someone is not, but what he and others think he is. In other words, the mask is an illusion, a costume. But when someone starts confusing the mask for their actual identity, the result is spiritual emptiness. And they don't just lose themselves. They start pulling everyone around them into that illusion too. Living with someone like this can be disorienting. You can feel like something's wrong, but it's hard to say what. They're not aggressive, they're not mean, but there's a complete lack of vulnerability, no rawness, no unpredictability, just this smooth, polished surface. Over time, it starts to affect you. You find yourself holding back, censoring your feelings, measuring your tone. Why? Because anytime you bring something real, something messy, emotional, human, they shut down, they recoil, they look uncomfortable, they can't handle it. Because what you're showing them, your truth, is something they've spent their whole lives burying. People who live through the persona are terrified of losing control. They've learned somewhere along the line that being perfect is the only way to be accepted, so they hide anything that doesn't fit that script. Fear, pain, desire, anger, weakness, it all gets locked away. But here's the thing. When you repress something for long enough, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't go away. It ferments. It morphs. It becomes something else. It becomes the shadow.
And that takes us straight into the third type, the repressed shadow owner. This person is the picture of balance. They're composed, in control, respectful, always doing the right thing. They might be the good one in the family, the one who never causes drama. But under that calm surface, something's boiling. You see, this person has spent years, sometimes decades, stuffing down every emotion they think is unacceptable. Anger? Nope. Desire? Not allowed. Envy? That's for bad people. Sadness? Weakness. They push it all into the basement of their psyche. They pretend it's not there. They act like they've transcended it. But here's what Jung discovered. The more you suppress your shadow, the stronger it becomes. And when it finally breaks through, it doesn't come out politely. It erupts. The repressed shadow owner is the kind of person who explodes over small things, holds silent grudges for years, gets passive-aggressive when they don't get their way, criticizes others constantly, especially people who are emotional, spontaneous, or different. It's not because they're mean, it's because those people remind them of the parts they're denying in themselves. Jung famously said, "The shadow is everything that the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves, and yet it insists on being expressed." That means it will show up somehow, in relationships, in projections, in destructive behaviors. And maybe the saddest part? The shadow isn't just made of bad things. It also contains potential, creativity, passion, strength, individuality. But when it's repressed, all of that gets twisted into something dark and toxic. Living with someone like this can feel like you're constantly tiptoeing around landmines. One wrong word and boom, they're cold, distant, or emotionally explosive. But what's even more dangerous is how they use guilt as a tool. That's what leads us to the fourth type, the moral controller. This person doesn't yell, they don't throw things, they don't argue in public, No, their power move is moral superiority. They don't attack you directly, they just make you feel bad for everything. For wanting things, for saying the wrong thing, for being too loud, too quiet, too confident, too sensitive. You name it. At first, it seems like they have high standards, like they care about ethics, values, principles. But as time goes on, you realize their morality is a prison and you're locked inside. They've projected all the unacceptable parts of themselves onto you, and now they punish you for it. Jung saw this clearly. He said that when people repress their shadow, they often project it onto others in the form of rigid moralism. They believe they're the good guy, the guardian of virtue. But really, they're hiding. They point fingers at others to avoid looking inward. You've probably heard these kinds of phrases before. I'm just being honest. Someone needs to keep you accountable. I say it because I care. But it's not really about care, it's about control. And it works. You start to second-guess yourself. You wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you are being selfish. Maybe you do need to tone it down. Maybe it is your fault. And before you know it, you're shrinking, silencing parts of yourself, trying to please someone who's not actually seeing you, they're just using you to avoid facing themselves. This kind of dynamic shows up a lot in families, religious circles, strict organizations, anywhere where obedience is confused with virtue. But here's the harsh truth. Extreme moralism is often a mask for deep, unacknowledged inner chaos. People who are really at peace with themselves don't need to control everyone else's behavior. Jung warned that these kinds of people are huge obstacles to growth, because you can't heal or evolve or become whole when someone else is constantly defining your worth by how well you follow their rules. And maybe now you're wondering, how did I end up here? How did I get pulled into all these patterns? Well, part of the answer might be in the next type we'll explore, the complexed individual. This person isn't controlling like the moralist. They're not polished like the persona bearer. They're not draining like the psychic vampire we'll meet later. But they are unpredictable, volatile. One moment they're warm and affectionate. The next moment they're cold, distant, or emotionally attacking you for something you don't even understand. They are ruled not by logic or intention, but by emotional complexes. And that makes them incredibly unstable to be around. In the next part of this video, we'll dive deep into what Jung called complexes and how they take over a person's behavior without them even realizing it. And then we'll look at the final, most exhausting type of all, the person who drains your energy, your peace, and eventually your identity. They don't shout, they don't explode, they just slowly consume you. That's next.
This is someone who lives under the control of their unconscious emotional triggers, what Jung called complexes. And when you're around someone like this, you're never really sure who you're going to get. One moment, they're loving, kind, attentive. The next, cold, accusing, explosive. It's like walking through a thunderstorm you didn't see on the radar. What's tricky is that these people aren't faking their reactions. They genuinely feel the things they say. The problem is, they're not reacting to you. They're reacting to something that happened years ago, something unresolved, something buried deep in the unconscious. Jung described complexes as autonomous clusters of emotion and memory. They're like little personalities inside us, formed from trauma, pain, or emotional wounds that were never healed. And when they get triggered, they take over. It's like the person you know disappears and the complex takes the wheel. Let's say you make a harmless comment. Suddenly, they're furious, hurt, acting like you betrayed them. You're confused, apologizing, trying to make things right. But deep down, you know this isn't really about you. You're just the trigger, the spark, and what's catching fire is a whole forest of past pain they've never dealt with. Living with someone like this creates a strange cycle. The relationship becomes a roller coaster, ups and downs, warmth and withdrawal,
connection, and chaos. And because there are good moments, real ones, you stay. You think, they're not always like this. I just need to avoid pushing their buttons. So you start to adapt. You tread lightly, you avoid certain topics, you manage their mood. You start feeling like your job is to keep everything stable. But here's the truth. You're not keeping them stable. You're just losing yourself in the process. And that's how the unconscious wins. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And for the complexed individual, fate looks like repeated emotional blow-ups, sabotaged relationships, and deep unconscious guilt they can't explain. The longer you stay connected, the more their inner chaos becomes yours. You start questioning your own memory, your own truth, and eventually, you begin to absorb their complexes as your own. But the final type we need to talk about, the most subtle, the most difficult to detect, and maybe the most exhausting of them all? Let's meet the psychic vampire. Now, don't get thrown off by the dramatic name. This isn't about fangs or fantasy. This is real. A psychic vampire is someone who doesn't just want your company. They want your energy, your presence, your attention, all of it, all the time. And at first, it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like closeness, like they really care, like you're special to them. They might seem needy, vulnerable, emotionally open. They might even seem like the only person who truly gets you. But here's what's actually happening. They're not relating to you as a separate person. They're relating to you as an emotional life support system. They can't sustain themselves psychologically, so they latch on to you. Slowly, quietly, they pull you in. First it's support, then it's comfort, then it's constant reassurance. Soon it's all your time, your space, your boundaries. They don't explode, they don't scream, but they consume you, bit by bit.
Jung warned about this kind of relationship. In his view, it represents a symbiotic bond, where two people are no longer truly separate. The psychic vampire doesn't see where they end and where you begin. And over time, you start to lose track of that too. You begin to feel guilty for wanting space, selfish for setting boundaries, cold for needing time alone. That's because the psychic vampire is incredibly skilled at flipping the narrative. One moment, they're the victim. You're not supportive enough. The next, they're the accuser. How could you be so distant, so careless? And just like that, you're living your life around their needs. You stop thinking about what you want, what you feel. You're just managing the dynamic, constantly trying to avoid the next emotional drain. But here's the most painful truth. No matter how much you give them, it will never be enough, because the emptiness they're trying to fill isn't something you can fix. It's their unconscious void. And until they're willing to face it, to heal it, to take responsibility for it, they'll keep feeding off the energy of others, especially the ones who care most. Jung called this a major threat to the process of individuation, the journey to becoming a whole, integrated self. Because as long as you're entangled in someone else's unconscious drama, you're not living your own life. You're not growing. You're not free. And maybe, just maybe, you've seen yourself in some of these profiles too. Maybe you've been the unconscious manipulator, or worn the persona mask, or used morality to control because you didn't feel in control inside. Maybe you've exploded from repressed emotion, or clung to someone out of fear of being alone. That's okay. Jung never said we should judge these patterns. He said we need to see them, to become aware of them. Because the moment you bring something from the unconscious into the light, it loses its power over you. That's where healing begins.
So if any of this resonated with you, if you saw your own story reflected back, then you've already taken the first step, awareness. Now comes the next step, choosing differently. That might mean setting boundaries, taking space, letting go of roles that were never yours to carry. Or maybe it means turning inward and asking the hard questions. Where am I projecting? What parts of myself have I ignored? It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because the more you bring your unconscious into the light, the more you reclaim your life. So here's what I want you to do. Pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, which of these 6 types have I experienced in my life? And which ones might live inside me? Drop it in the comments. Start the conversation. You never know who else might be going through the same thing, and your insight might be the light someone else needs. And if this video helped you see things more clearly, there's more where this came from. The next episode is going to take you even deeper into the world of Jungian psychology, where we talk about healing, integration, and how to step into your full self without being pulled by anyone else's shadow. Because the more light we bring to the unconscious, the less it controls us. See you in the next one.